Okay, great. Thank you, Heather. I'm just going to say again, after dealing with our procedures, I'm saying this again for the recording, after dealing with our procedures for handling the applications during this era of COVID, the next project going forward will be collecting community input, because it's very important for us to do that. We're required by the state, and we can lose our standing if we don't do it. But it's also how the reason why it's important is because the mission is all about community service. And so that'll be going forward. First things first. The way that we've usually calculated is a spreadsheet created by the late Mark London. So he's the one who had all the information about how to do it. But luckily we have another, Rizwan is going to help us do that, another Excel mastermind, hopefully. So we'll get that all, be able to unlock it. I think it's pretty, I think he had the admin stuff for it, but I think the way that it works is pretty, we should be able to figure that out. And it works really well. It's an algorithm that figures out, you'll get your spreadsheet. You have the list of the folks in there, the applicants, what they want. Then you, like a 1 to 5 grading scale that you enter in. And then that changes automatically to a percentage of what, depending on how you rated them, a percentage of what they were asking for. And then there's the budget works through that. And then there's a field where you can make a change if you don't agree with that percentage. And then there's at the bottom, it all adds up to through the actual budget that we have, which of course we're going to have to estimate. We won't have the exact amount. And then our chore there, like Linda and I and Irene will be to, and Rizwan will be to reconcile these amounts. And usually, in the group meeting, as half of you know, you would go in and you would talk to like Rob, the old chair, and everyone, and you would input your stuff, and then he's reconciling it, and then you make any adjustments. Because if we go over that budgeted amount, then you have to work on your choices so everything kind of reconciles together. So we'll do that virtually, one-on-one, and hopefully it'll all just work out anyway. We won't have to do any of that.
Susan, I have a question.
Yeah.
How many applicants do you have to date?
We don't know. They have, Massachusetts Cultural Council has the applications, and they'll put out the panel book that we can then download. And I don't know the date that they present that to us yet.
And then I have a question.
Sure.
Are we going to meet as a council and sort of talk about the applications, before we finish putting in our score?
I think that'll be up to you guys. We've technically had our annual meeting already, and I know some people have said, it's really hard to have, a lot of long meetings. So, depending on how you go, we could end up doing it one-on-one. I seem to remember that we had to do some voting, didn't we, to reach a consensus. So we may have a meeting to do that after we have most of the stuff in and ready to go.
In the past, we sat around a table and talked about how we felt about the grants. So
that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we came to consensus.
Yeah, so we can totally do that. Yep.
Paul, I'm thinking that people that are new, I don't know if it's just me, but a bit overwhelmed by the amount of paperwork here that you sent, which I appreciate, but it's a lot to absorb. I think if we're new at this, we should pair up with somebody who's already doing this so that we get a sense of what this really works, how it actually works, the mechanics of it, because this just seems overwhelming to me right at the moment.
Okay, sure, absolutely. You guys want to do that among
I think that's a great idea to tag on to somebody who knows what they're doing. I also was curious, so every town has a certain number of people representing the town, but in no way does that, like Showmark, the 3 people from Showmark don't vote together. Every person has their own vote, right?
Everybody has their own vote. The spreadsheet that you have, you're putting in your, somebody's here. Here's Lisa Simmons here. Everybody puts in your thing, and then we reconcile. We enter this data into the master sheet, and then we reconcile all the amounts. And that's why we have to do like some discussions and do adjustments on stuff. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, sorry I'm a little late.
Oh, no, it's not a problem.
It sounded like there were 9 old people and 9 new people, so
Yeah.
maybe you can even, it works out perfectly in that. And I was just wondering, I was asking about how many applications we've gotten, because I personally haven't seen anything about this yet, and I know the deadline's approaching. So my concern is like, how much advertising have we done, and like put it on Islanders Talk, which everybody seems to read, and some of the art sites, and get the word out before.
Yeah, absolutely. We sent out press releases to the papers.
Yeah.
And obviously we can't do our public information meeting. So we have the webinar from the Massachusetts Cultural Council. We were gonna
But it has to people have to know
post,
about
yeah,
it.
so we're gonna post that on social media.
I think that island thing, that sounds perfect, and we still
Islanders
have
Talk
time.
has something like 15,000 members to it.
I think that
Yeah,
would
I mean,
be
that's
critical to
great.
get that
People
out there.
really do
Great idea.
respond to
And you
that.
still have time. I mean, it's not a lengthy application. If you all know who might have done it before, it's really not a lengthy. It takes maybe an hour. So
Well, I just don't know if we're low on applicants or if we have
Well,
enough,
a
or
lot of
because
the-
of COVID that people haven't really heard about it
Well,
yet. So I just feel like we need to do a push before the
Sure.
deadline.
You should.
Sure. Yeah, and we also have folks who apply every year too, which is also awesome.
So have you looked at your page?
I've looked at our page. Yeah, I was doing some
And how
work on
many,
it last
does it
night.
say does it tell you how many? Because then you'll know based on last year what your numbers are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't hurt. I mean, we're trying to do a big push right now for everybody to say, don't forget that the deadline is on such and such a day.
Mhm.
And hope, because numbers are low everywhere. And I think it is a lot to do with COVID and a lot to do with people at the election and people just not being able to really focus. And so we're also doing a big push for people to just say, hey, remember. And you also have to remember too, that what people normally would have applied for doesn't necessarily exist anymore. And they don't think that they can apply for like a festival or for, working in nursing homes or for doing performances in schools.
Okay.
But we do, LCCs also can fund operational costs. They can fund virtual programming. So we're trying to get the word out to applicants too, that, to say, even though you can't do this particular thing in person, you can apply to do it virtually. There's still people who are looking for virtual content, as we head into vaccine mode. But, one, we want applicants to understand that, and we want LCCs to also understand that those things are viable and do provide public benefit.
Okay. We can have the papers, see if we can have them post on their digital things if we can't make the written, the hard copy deadline. And of course, Islanders Talk. And so,
Islanders Talk is a Facebook
yeah.
group. I'd like to see a show of hands. Who is on Facebook? So not everybody. Okay.
I mean, you have to hit that's why you're going to do that. You're going to do the paper, see if the paper can do it. Like, you're going to do a number of different things to see if you can touch. Yeah.
The libraries also were given the information, and some of them sent it out with their weekly blast.
Super. Okay.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Being a recipient for many years from this grant, last year we were told that we could forward the grant because of COVID to our following year, which would be this coming July. But I heard the other day you say that those grants need to be used by the end of June. But that's not what Rob had said to me. So I'm trying to find out for ourselves and other people who may have not used their grant, where that lies. And then I also heard from Rob that if we didn't use it for last year or this year, that we shouldn't apply for this upcoming grant time. So just trying to figure that out. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that, we postponed ours. However, we're doing a virtual artisan festival, Indigenous Artisan Festival now. And it's gone so well that we've extended it another week. So it was for 2 weeks and now it's going on another week.
That's
And
gorgeous, gorgeous work too, by the way.
through Facebook. So who would have known? And the silver lining out of this is that when we do get back to doing our regular show, we'll do Facebook or some platform virtually at the same time. And so it really reaches more people than just who is here on the Vineyard, right?
Lisa, can you explain how long you can have an extension? I was under the impression it's 1 year from the time that the grant was given.
It is usually. So because of this crazy COVID time, when people couldn't do their programs in the spring and then even into the fall, we guided councils to say, okay, we're gonna allow you to either modify or extend your grant, and you can extend your grant into the FY21 grant phase. And that really is up to councils how long they want to grant that. You could grant someone's extension until December 2021 if you felt like you wanted to do that as a council, just because knowing, because so many things got postponed, and it could be that someone got a grant to do something in September of next year or October of next year, and you've allowed them to extend that until next year to do that. So it doesn't have to be necessary. It's always a year from when you got the letter. So all of your grantees who got letters in January, February of last year would have had until February of 2021 to do that, but you've allowed extensions, right? So those extensions can go until December of 2021 if you wish to do that. You just need to make sure that you're working with the municipality who's cutting those checks and doing that money, that's all copacetic, and you're doing that. But you have the ability to do that. Councils make different decisions. Like Lowell only grants forward. They don't do reimbursement grants. So they don't fund anything from July 1 to January 1 of the previous year. They only grant forward. They don't grant back. So that's up to the council, how the council wants to handle that. But for us at Mass Cultural Council, we're advising that when you're allowing people to do an extension, that you give them that extension until the time that they were going to do their program, and then they wouldn't have to submit their reimbursements until the following year. You were trying to get people to get their money. You were trying to get people, even if you gave them money, then you're giving them an extension to do their program because some people already gave them their money.
Well, to Berta's point about reapplying for yet another grant when you haven't spent the money or received the money for the first one, how do you answer that?
So that is also up to the council. So the way we see it is that if that program had happened, then that applicant would have applied in FY21 anyway, right? So it really is up to the council to make that decision about whether or not you will grant for a program that was extended or modified and hasn't happened yet. It's entirely up to you to make that decision. So because you've already granted someone $500 or whatever for that program that got extended until now, fall of 2021, but they're also applying for fall of 2021 for this cycle, it's completely up to the council to make that decision. And just so taking into account, looking at the applications that are coming in for you all right now, looking at the money and the allocation that you're going to be getting for FY21 and what money you might still be that got unencumbered because people didn't do their programs. You just might want to take a look at that so that you don't have all of this money left over if you're not going to get the same number of applications that you got last year. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's entirely up to you, and you just need to make that decision as a council about whether or not, when you see grant applications coming in from applicants who you've already granted last year but they haven't done their programming, that's up to you guys to make that decision.
So can I ask a couple questions? So I have a couple questions. One is regarding the grants for 2020. when do we know how many were utilized and how many were extended? That's my first question. The second was, when will the state announce the amount of money that will be allocated for grants? And who knows, who has the knowledge of how many applicants have come in? Who has that knowledge now?
Okay, first question. You all should know what you paid out in the FY20 grant cycle. And you got that information from your town accountant who will say what got paid, but you should be looking at what grants you gave out last year, what grants haven't come in yet, and you should email those people who have yet to request their reimbursement to see whether or not they're going to take that FY20 money or if they extended them. I think that Robert had said that you just gave a blanket extension to everybody. I believe like everyone got an extension of their grant to the following year. So I think that I remember him saying, in an email back in the summer that he said he had done that. So my suggestion is that you get in touch with every single one of those grantees you gave money to last year.
Well, excuse me, none of us had done that since we're all new to this tonight.
Yeah, they're new.
That's why we're here. So this makes no sense to me.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Irene she's told me she's already sent out emails to that.
Okay.
Irene is our treasurer. Yeah.
So that's how you find out.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening, sorry, Paul. So what ends up happening is when a grantee finishes their project, they send in a reimbursement request form with the receipts that comes to the treasurer and comes to the council, wherever that email is. Okay. That gets signed off on by 2 members of the council. And then that information, that reimbursement form goes to the town accountant, and the town accountant then pays that money back to the grantee, right? So in this crazy year, a lot of these projects, most of them never happened. So our guidance from Mass Cultural Council was, if you have the opportunity to pay people, pay them, because people are hurting. And artists who are part of festivals or organizations that were applying for money still needed that money. They had still expended some money in the process of trying to put together their program, or they sent you something that said we wanted an extension, or we want to modify our grant and go virtual, and this is what we're going to use our money for. So now the puzzle comes together where to ask the question of those grantees that didn't get their money yet, and now they don't have to submit until February of 2021, but if you've granted them extensions, you need to figure that out as well, right? So it's a little bit messy this year, but it's really just reaching out to those grantees you gave money to this year to find out, 1, did they do their project? 2, have they filed for their reimbursement? 3, if they were granted an extension, are they planning on still doing their programming? All right, those are the questions you need to ask, because that will tell you how much money you might have left over from the FY20 grant cycle. And that's the difference between encumbered money and unencumbered money. So your unencumbered money will be money from grantees who decided they did not want to take that money for FY20, and it goes into your FY21 allocation. Okay, does that make sense?
We also have, I think, a small amount of money set aside for admin.
Yes, you have your 5% for admin and your
Right.
15% for council program if you want to do that.
Right.
So I just want to make sure for the new folks that they're clear on that. So any year where you have money left over because a grantee might say, I can't do my project, forget it, I'm just not going to do it. That money is in your account and it becomes unencumbered because that grantee is not going to use it. It has to be used in the next fiscal year. So that's where your book, for this year, it's going to be screwy. You're just going to need to figure it out. And hopefully when those emails come back from the FY20 grantees, they'll tell you, no, I'm not going to use it. Yes, I'm extending. And whatever the other one was.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to that question.
Okay.
The answer on allocations we are really, really close to giving you your allocations. We have a grant committee meeting next week. The budget has finally come out for committee and is sitting on the governor's desk. The governor has 10 days to veto or make any changes to it, and we're hoping that that he does not do that. And if you go to our Mass Cultural Council blog, right now there's something on there that talks about sending a letter to your state rep, basically saying, please, Governor, accept the Mass Cultural Council budget as stated from the House and the Senate, and that budget is currently at 18.2 million. So we got level funding this year, which is amazing considering the crazy year and the budget for the state. So we are hoping that happens, and so when that happens, a certain portion of that gets allocated to the local cultural council program. Right? Last year it was 14.115 million, 154 million, which means everyone got a bump and everyone got an increase. So we're not sure what we're running those allocations now, and it goes through a formula that is where the computer decides what amount of money will be given to each local cultural council. So we are the full council meets in January. I think it's January 6th. And at that time is when they will approve what the allocations. This meeting's been upgraded. Okay. So now on January 6th, you will get an email from me that will be telling you what your allocation is and other information. So that's when you should know, January 6th, after the board meeting and after they approve the Mass Cultural Council spending plan. Yeah.
Can I just jump in something real quick? In case Zoom cuts us off early, they said we're waiting to get our own Zoom account. So this is the basic account.
It said it extended it.
Oh, that's what they said. But I was thinking, in case they didn't, Lisa, can I put your email in there in case anybody has questions if we get cut off? I can put it in the chat.
And I'm sorry, what was the third question?
Sorry, folks, go ahead.
My third one, I was wondering how many, who has the information regarding how many applicants there already are?
Oh, so you all have a password on the Smart Simple program. You have an email and a password that will get you into the Smart Simple program that will let you know who has applied, who is currently submitted, and who is currently in draft form.
Okay. I don't have that information.
You don't? Okay, I will make sure that I get you that information. And then what you do is you go into the Smart Simple program, and I'll give you that email address, and then you can go in and take a look.
Super.
I tried updating our members list on the council page. But then I realized that not everyone has been notified, as far as I know. I'm talking about the new members, that they have been accepted by their town council. Can you raise your hand if you have not received a letter from your town saying that you have been accepted? You have not. Okay, that's most of the new members.
Yeah, and that happens. I mean, it's just really sort of like being on top of the municipality to make sure that they're doing that and understanding that they're, in the midst of doing a bunch of other things. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like just having a outreach to the municipality and say when, I don't know if people get sworn in or it's just a blanket letter or something.
You should get sworn in. I didn't get a letter, but I did get sworn in, and you have to do ethics training, which the town clerk should tell you, and we need to have that confirmation that you did that. I will call the town clerks and see what's.
Rizwan wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
I do. So I think most of us are in a similar boat where, or at least some of us are, where we had to be approved by our town's board of selectmen. So I don't think I'm going to get a letter, but I was approved at our meeting last night. So is a letter necessary to be fully confirmed?
Oh, you asking me? That's up to your, every municipality is different, unfortunately. So
Okay.
some municipalities are like, yes, I need a letter, or just need a letter. Other municipalities say you have to go through this whole swearing in thing. So you just need to figure out what the protocol is for your particular municipality about how they bring people onto their boards.
Okay.
So you call the town clerk to find out that information?
Yes.
Okay.
And
It's usually the appointing, it's usually the appointing authority. So that's either the, more, in your case, it's going to be your Board of Selectmen.
Barry, you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted,
I did actually have another question.
Yeah, Rizwan had.
I was going to ask, what is our, as the local council, what is our deadline to make decisions on all applications? So you said we'll get found out about our funding on the 6th of January. When do we then have to make all the decisions to submit to you?
So in a normal year, which it's not, so in a normal year, the application period ends on October 16th. When that happens, the next day on October, it's actually the 15th. If it falls on a Sunday, then it's the Monday. But normally the grant cycle closes on October 15th. And in this case, it's December 14th, which is Monday. The next day after that, we have to do a bunch of admin work at the council in order to move all of those submitted applications to under review. Once we move those applications into under review, then we create panel books for every local cultural council. And those panel books get hung off of the MassCulture site. So when you go into, right now, if you went into the MassCulture site under Martha's Vineyard, you'll see a tab on the left that says panel book. If you clicked on that, it'll be like the last 3 years of panel books. So you're waiting for your FY21 panel book that we try to turn around in like 3 days. I mean, it's just really a manual beast, but we try to turn it around in 3 days. Once you get that panel book, you can pull together a meeting to discuss the applications. And in a perfect world, you would already know what your allocation is. You would already know sort of how you wanted to budget that money. And you would be going through applications, and let's say someone asked for $500. Let's say your allocation is $10,000 and you have 50 applications. You'd be trying to then figure out at that point. So what we're suggesting for this year is if councils wanted to come together once the grant cycle closes and once you have your panel book to do a preliminary look at the applications and conversations around ones that you will accept and ones that you won't accept, and do sort of preliminary numbers based on what your allocation was last year, you can do that. And then on the 6th, you can set a meeting anytime after the 6th of January to have another meeting to then just say, okay, let's actually solidify what these numbers are and who these grantees are going to be. You need to have your annual report to the Mass Cultural Council by March. I think we moved it to March 15th. So normally, in a normal year, you would have had to complete your annual report by January 15th. But we moved it. We moved it now that you have to have your annual report in by either March 1st and March 15th. And I'm sorry, I should remember that number, but there are lots of numbers that are changing in our world. So just, it'll say that on the MassCulture. But that's your deadline for getting all of your grants done. And you have to remember, for those of you who are new, when you do your grant review, you always send out your denial letters first, because you have to wait 15 days because they have the opportunity, right, to file a request for reconsideration, which comes to the Mass Cultural Council that we review. And once all those 15 days are over, which is why when you finish your annual report, that's the day you send out your approval letters. You do not send out your approval letters until your annual report is complete, because that way you don't overgrant or undergrant.
Great, thank you.
Is that helpful? Okay, good.
I wanted to get back to the extension question. Specifically, let's take Berta's situation as an example. If if we send out letters to everybody saying, do you plan to go ahead with your project or not? I understand that if they're not planning on going ahead with it, it becomes unencumbered money that we get to spend next time around. But if they say they're going to go ahead with their project, you said you were encouraging us to send the money out by the end of the year because people are hurting, organizations are hurting.
That was FY20. That was an FY20.
I understand.
Okay.
So there's a couple of questions. Number one is, how do we make sure that the money gets used for the purpose for which it was requested? And number two, how do these organizations decide whether they should apply for 21? If they're going to be not doing their project till 21, are they precluded from applying again, or can they double dip? Do they have to have a different project? Could you be very specific about that?
All right, so a lot of this is up to you as a local cultural council to make these decisions. So let me just say about the first one, about making sure that people use the money for which it's intended. I mean, we're under the impression that people work on an honor system, right? That you can do checks and balances on people. You can request final reports from people. You know the people that you're granting to and can go to their programs. For the most part, people are going to use the money in which it's intended. And if you feel like they have not, there's recourse, and you could ask the grantee to give back the money if you feel that they have not used the money in which it was intended. But we never want to get to that point, right? I mean, we want, most people are creating great art and culture and doing something for the community, unless they're just siphoning off, and that definitely needs, that needs to be handled and dealt with. But for the most part, it's not going to happen. If you feel like someone is doing that, you can bring it to the council, and I can say, in the guidelines, it tells you what to do if you feel like you either need something more from that grantee, you either need that grantee to modify or explain what they've done, right? And then you can ask for that funding back. And so as far as we sort of talked about this a little bit, as far as double dipping, you can call it that, or you can make the decision to just give more money to that particular organization that you've already given money to and they haven't had their program. But if they might be applying for that same program that's happening, that got extended, and maybe they need social media, or maybe they need to build a new website, or maybe they, you can always ask people questions. You can always grant conditional grants to applicants and ask them to clarify things. If you like the project, if you feel like you really want to support it, there is always that option for you to do a conditional approval and then ask for more information from that particular grantee. I mean, I don't really see it as double dipping. And this year, it's really just going to take a lot of sort of looking at what comes in, what money you have. The idea is that local cultural councils spend their money in that fiscal year, in the fiscal year that they have. So we don't want you to carry over money. We definitely want that being spent within this year. So, and we understand it's a screwy year. So it's always like, if you had an extra $3,000 and you were questioning whether or not you wanted to give an applicant who you'd already given money to, their program hasn't happened, but you gave them an extension and they're applying again, then that's, you already know that grantee, and that's going to happen, and that they're only going to do that much more with the money that you give them. So we're just asking councils to think about that and err on the side of supporting those artists and those organizations that probably could use a little bit more funding, as we know it's been a difficult year for all of them.
So if you were advising an applicant, would you advise them to augment their budget, their projected costs for additional attributes, or would you advise them to ask at the same level?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that I would advise them if they're applying for the same exact program that was granted and funded. Yeah, I mean, I would say that to make that clear in their application that the additional funding for this program is going to be used for website design, social media costs, presenting in a virtual environment, things like that.
It gives them an opportunity to beef up their project.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, thank you.
I think that's helpful for them.
So we would be in dialogue with them anyway, but should we have some sort of backup activity record of documentation of what they've done perhaps to compensate? Like what they've done virtually, or that's just up to us to, depending on the.
I mean, it's up to you, but remember, if that's something that you wanted them to include as part of their grant application, you should have put that in your priorities.
Okay.
Like
We've had one example so far of a grantee who was supposed to do, I brought this up at our last meeting. He was supposed to do a program at a senior center, which of course is closed. So he cut a deal with the local cable TV, and he has a whole schedule of performances from one of his other works. And so we reimbursed him because it met the criteria of a public performance, although it wasn't the same.
You know something, this is something that we actually had a long conversation with Mass Cable, or whatever their full name is. And this is one of the things that we're trying to get applicants to work more closely with their cable TV stations and for local cultural councils to understand that the work that they are doing on the cable station is public benefit. They're providing, the cable access stations are helping organizations do fundraisers, they're helping artists show their art, they're helping teaching artists teach in the schools, because there's broadband isn't everywhere and internet's not everywhere. So using cable access as a way to support arts and culture in your community is a fantastic way for artists to get, and for organizations to support their community. Paul had a question.
Yeah, I'm going back to Barry's question about how do you ensure whether they've done the program that they set out to do. And you said you could ask for the money back. You don't allocate the money until after they've finished the program. Isn't that correct?
Right. So you guys aren't a direct council. You're a reimbursement council. So, and that's something completely, we can talk about that later. Like, you have a lot on your plate. So
yes, you do.
You're correct. You're correct. So here's an applicant that comes to you and says, here's my reimbursement for $500. I spent, $200 on a Zoom subscription. I spent $300 on paint. And you're like, but you did, that wasn't what you said you were originally going to do for your project. You were going to go into the library and paint with kids or whatever. And now you're painting murals with paint, and you have a Zoom account for what? So, right. So that's when, after the fact, that's when you can say, all right, well, we're not actually happy with that. Can you explain that a little bit more? Hold back the reimbursement from them to say this isn't what we agreed, but always thinking that you're going to negotiate in the positive for that particular applicant. You don't want someone to have to spend that money and then not get reimbursed for it because they changed something and didn't come to you. There's always a way to negotiate that. So you're right. As a reimbursement council, you have that ability to hold back money if you didn't like the project they did, but you have to be really, really careful about doing that. I mean, it has to be something incredibly egregious, or something completely way off that they didn't tell you about, that in order for that to happen.
And we'll have that information for you about who's got extensions and what have you. Like I said, Irene is working on that now, so we'll have that doc to pass along to you when you get the spreadsheet.
I have a question. People that have received extensions, are we encouraging them to reapply even though their project has been extended to 2021?
I mean, you don't have to encourage them to reapply. I mean, they may reapply even though their project has been extended to 2021, because that's what they do, right? And if it's an opportunity to get more money for a project to support it in a virtual way, then yeah. I think one of the things that you really need to do is look and see, and I'm writing this in the chat, but to look and see what applications you have, to look and see if there's anyone who's on there that you think should be applying and isn't applying, and they still have 4 days to do that. Most people don't apply until the weekend anyway, which is not, we don't advise that because sometimes the system crashes, like it just did last week. And so yeah, I mean, I think that if you feel like there are projects out there that really could offer a lot of value to your community, and one, they're not applying, you should tell them, or two, if they've applied and extended, but you feel like it would be great for them to be able to get on cable, or it'd be great for them to be able to hire someone to shoot their artwork, or it'd be great for someone to come in and film the work that they're doing, but they need an extra $500 to do that. Sure. I mean, it doesn't hurt to just sort of like be transparent and open with people as they're applying for more funds for a project that they extended to through 2021. Does that help?
I have a question.
Yep.
If someone works with the youth and the community, can they apply twice?
Would they work for what?
The youth and the community in different.
So what would they be applying twice for? You mean as an individual and then also as a youth, as for the youth organization?
Well, they work with programs for the youth, and there's a separate category for that. And then they also do community work. Can they apply twice?
Sure, because the applicant would be different, right? So the contact person might be the same, but the applicant is different. So the applicant would be the youth group, and then the other applicant would be the community group, and the person filling out the form, the application, is the contact person. That can be the same, because the money's going to 2 different groups. It's not going to that particular person.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to thank all of you for like jumping on board and being part of the new council. This is really exciting.
Yes, thank you.
And it might feel a little daunting because you're in a crazy year, but once you get through this, piece of cake. We just thank you for the service that you're doing.
Once I get to my cocktail, I feel much better.
Oh yeah, you and me both. All right, so I put in the chat, it says the Smart Simple website is down here that's highlighted. Now, the email that is associated with, and this will make sense when you click on the Smart Simple website, it'll say login and password. The login is an email address, and this HJ Beth just happens to be the email. We can change that. It just happens to be 3 years ago. We randomly went through the councils and the computer just picked email addresses because we needed to get this out as soon as possible. And so that when you go to Smart Simple, you put in this email address and then you put in the password, which is welcome. So that's the password we set. You can always change that. But please go on to this website where the link is, try this and see if the glitch about Smart Simple is only one person can be in there at a time. And we're moving to the Smart Simple, a bigger Smart Simple system in 2021, and we're hoping to rectify that so anybody from a council can be in. But right now, only one person can be in at a time.
Would you explain what information you get from that site?
You will be able to see everyone who's applied to the Martha's Vineyard Cultural Council. You'll get the name, the address, the email address, the amount that they're applying for, whether it's been submitted, whether it's in draft form, all of that information. And you will be able to see their applications as well.
And yeah, and if you know the people, feel free, if that's okay with you, Linda, feel free to, to contact them, say if there's someone that and they haven't completed their application, talk to them.
Another thing I would like to suggest, in the past, we've always paid lip service to having board members attend events. I always tried to go, especially if I didn't, if I'd never been, for example, to, let's say, Built on Stilts, which is something we have funded forever. And then when you go and you really get to see what it's like. And so I think what we should do, once we've made up our minds about the grants, at the end of, by March 1st, and let's say we see the whole year's program, we should assign different board members to go to see different programs. That would be my recommendation, so that we cover everything.
It would be nice to have records too, so we can promote the folks that we support.
Yeah.
We'd like to, Lisa, we'd like to bump up our social media presence and our profile page also on the Cultural Council. So we want to do, more advocacy.
It's a great idea, and it also comes back to, what you all were talking about as far as how do we know that the projects are what we funded. Just to be able to step in every once in a while to see things. It shows the grantees and the cultural community that you're, who you are. It actually raises your visibility, which is really great too. But it also gives you an opportunity to see if, the thing that you funded. Like, we funded this. Is this actually as cool as we thought it was going to be? Or is this happening the way we thought it was going to happen? It's a great way to show your support for that community and not just giving money, but being involved in some other way.
Lisa,
I have
can
a
you
question
ask me
about
what
that
the-
also. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
Can you just say what the password is again? I can't seem to get in. I've tried the
Try welcome. Is it not welcome?
No, I did hjbeth@yahoo.com and I tried welcome with a capital W and a small w, and it's not letting me in.
All right, hold on 1 second. I am going to, all right, you can, what was the other question? I'm going to try to reset the password and then let's see what, do you want me to, is this the email you want? Because I can reset the email and the password for you.
You can put in my email if you want.
All right, what's that? You guys don't have an email, do you? Like Martha's Vineyard Cultural Council at?
This is, well, it's MVCC Susan. We're going to make a general one.
All right, MVCC Susan.
Yeah.
At
Gmail.
Susan, we
Alright,
do
that's-
have a MailChimp one.
MVCC Susan at Gmail. And I'm just going to make it. Let me see if that works.
Heather.
Susan, we
Okay,
have
so what
a
other
email-
questions did you have?
And what are you doing for the password?
I'm gonna reset it.
We'll talk.
What's the
about
new
that.
one?
We'll
You know, don't worry about it. When I reset it, you're gonna have to reset it anyway.
Super, okay.
You know what I mean? So when you get this, you're going to have to reset it.
Okay.
So let's just try this. I'm just gonna send this to you. Let me submit this. It's okay. Do I want to keep it? No. I want to save it. Yes. So it's under Susan's Gmail. And let's see if this works for you. And then this is going to be the password.
Am I going to get an email to that? Do I have to activate anything?
You may.
Okay. Heather, great. I got your email, Heather. I haven't gotten anything yet from them.
You might not, because I sent it to you, so you might just need to go in
Okay.
with
So
your email address and try to go in that way.
I got in and it took me to the change passwords.
Yeah. Right. So then you can change your password. Whatever you guys want the password to be, you can make that decision, and Susan can change it.
Okay.
She's already there.
I'm not in there. Well, the other Susan's in there.
Yeah, the other Susan's in there.
Heather, we'll coordinate all that. Why don't we leave this with this one for now, and then we'll go back and we'll coordinate with the other Facebook and with the other email that you have there.
Yeah, so you have one that covers everything. So you don't have to like five, like we do. Like I know at Mass Cultural Council off, that's
Yeah.
going to change too, that you're going to be able to have one password that's going to get you into everything and
Yeah.
not have to have a different password for everything.
And then
So I
we'll-
can never remember my password.
And we'll change the email to the general one later, but I think we should research and make sure that everything's active and everything before we put it in there. And we may want to, because that's kind of long too, we might want to make it a little more mouth friendly, a little shorter.
Yeah,
and a little
right.
concise.
I know, that's the thing. Right, XYZ PQR2 exclamation, whatever it is to make it malware friendly.
Great.
I have to leave soon, but can I just ask one more question to summarize? We need to go to our town council to do an ethics training. Is
So
that
when
what
you get appointed to any board in any municipality, they require an ethics training. It's really, it's like a module where you click through it and say, yeah, you know, it's basically around conflict of interest. It's around, you know, that's mainly what it's around. But any board that you join in a municipality, you have to go through this ethics training. It takes maybe 20 minutes.
Okay.
So that's what they will say. So that's why you need to get appointed, and then you need to take that ethics training, or you need to take the ethics and get appointed, whichever way the Board of Selectmen does it in your particular town.
Okay, thank you.
I have one last question. Going back to visiting different events. Generally speaking, do presenting groups give councils free tickets, or it came up a couple of times in the
And this
past?
will come up probably in your ethics training. So like for Mass Cultural Council, we can't accept anything over $50.
Well, there's
because-
nothing here that's going to be more than $50.
Yeah.
So
So, you know, you can always say, oh, I'd love to come see that performance, and people will give you tickets. Just make sure that there's no, you know, it all comes down to the whole ethics, conflict of interest thing and stuff like that. Most of the stuff people go to are free, but if not, if there's a theater performance or something that you're funding, you know, they can certainly gift you a ticket to come and see that, and that's fine. But I would check with, when you do that ethics training, and also it's always just good to check in with, you know, the council, the town around things like that. You don't want to be caught, you know, in the Martha's Vineyard Times saying, you know, so and so that Linda got, how come she got a free ticket, and look what's happening, get on the council and get free tickets. You know, we don't want that kind of story.
Those gangsters on the Martha's Vineyard Arts Council.
Right. Right. It's a pay for play. If we give you a grant, then you need to give us 20 free tickets to your performance. Right.
Well,
Yeah, we don't want that.
Is that something that we can either use out of our administrative budget, or reserve out of our general? Do we have a general? We cannot.
No.
So we can't. In other words, we can't reimburse our members for going to things ourselves.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
We advocate public art and public benefit, so hopefully a lot of stuff is.
Yeah, but in the past, I have paid for tickets to, let's say, the Playhouse or.
Yeah, 'cause it's nice because you want to support that too.
Yeah. It's not that much money usually.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I do want to note too, there's tons of resources I've been telling you guys at the Massachusetts Cultural Council. There's tutorials that are PDFs and videos. So you can also, if you have, you know, spare time or you want to know more, you can also, I recommend you check out all of that. And when you go to the login page for us, or toolkit login page, you'll see everything listed there. So you can get in and find out more about stuff too.
I
Yeah,
do
that's
have to
great.
run, so thank you so much for this. I appreciate it very much.
Oh, sure. And I just think that right now your focus should be on making sure that you have enough applications, and that people that are in there who you think should be in there, and then in getting out the word that people have until December 14th. Your focus for the next 2 weeks is really going to be on looking at those applications once you get the panel book, and trying to make a decision of whether you want to have 2 meetings One, to sort of preliminary look at them before you get your allocation on January 6th. And then when you have, then you'd have another meeting to solidify those allocations. So right now, those are the things that you should really be focused on.
Okay, okay.
Thank
It's
you.
your bank account, how much money you're gonna have, and then granting out that money.
For those people who weren't at last week's meeting, since we are a council that has 6 towns in it, West Tisbury is our bank. So our treasurer works with the treasurer from West Tisbury. That's where the money is allocated.
Thank you. Happy Hanukkah,
Thank you so
everybody.
much. Happy
Thank you,
Hanukkah.
everybody.
Happy
Thank you,
Hanukkah.
Lisa.
Happy Hanukkah and happy holidays. If I don't see
Happy
you,
holidays.
please call me. Call
Thank
me
you.
anytime you need. If you have a meeting and you need me to jump on, or you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa.
And we're
Thank you.
interested
Have a
in
great
the office
weekend.
hours too, so, okay.
Oh, yes, yes. So we had talked about that too with Nantucket and the Cape and figuring out how we might be able to do that. They're just good to sort of like meet people, hear what other people are doing.
And we'll contact the cable TV. We'll work on to push everybody, feel free to get the word out. I mean, you can have more than one post on Islanders Talk, advocate.
Right.
Super. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.